We will now begin with the panel discussion. Hence, I would invite our guest speakers for the panel discussion, and I would also invite Ms. Megha to join us.
Thank you, Sachi. Thank you, panelists, for the wonderful submissions. Mr. Aditya, there's a question for you in our Q&A box. He wants to ask is why is India still dependable on inputs for solar plants? When would India take over China as a major manufacturer and exporter of solar panels?
It's a good question. Actually, majority of India's solar capacity is dependent. Though we are one of India's largest manufacturer, we have to agree. Majority of the solar manufacturing value chain is dependent on raw materials from China. As many of you know, the major solar components are cell, glass, aluminum frames. I think entire value chain, 75 to 80% of the solar panel value chain is dependent on China. The pricing of the raw materials is controlled by the Chinese market. However, for the last 2-3 years, Indian government has come up with a production linked incentive scheme. I think it's up to 10 gigawatt. Companies like Tata, Jindal, maybe 6 to 7 companies have participated in that. And maybe by end of 2027, 28, these plants or these capacities would start functioning at their full rated output. So maybe that time we should see India can meet their solar panel requirements from Indian manufacturers itself. So maybe 3-4 years down the line, we see maybe Indian panels, majority of Indian panels will be started using in the domestic projects. We are now, I think, maybe 10-12% of our total installed capacity, 10-12% where Indian panels are being used. Like that, yes, many Indian companies are also exporting to other countries where Chinese products are not allowed. As reason, we are also exporting every year, and last year also we did good number of exports to US and EU where non-Chinese modules were required. So I see maybe by end of 3-4 years, yes, we'll be self-sustained and we'll start competing with China in terms of volumes, not maybe in terms of pricing, but in terms of volumes. Yeah, something else.
Thank you, Mr. Aditya, for addressing that. I'm sure the delegate is contented with the response. Mr. Paransky, Mr. Arpit has a question for you. He is asking that core nature of renewable energy is decentralized, but we are keen on making it centralized power generation. So, what can be done to penetrate and to solve the core issues of the country by focusing on decentralized solutions, microgrids, residential solars, and desalination solutions?
I think the perception that we are only centralizing renewables is not correct because we have large rooftop installations now. It is happening across the country. It's not only those solar blessed states, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh. Other than that, also other states have rooftop installations, and all the rooftop installations, in a way, are decentralized, a part of the decentralized generation. They are connected at lower system voltage, and many states have net metering facility, where if you are generating more than what you need, then it is adjusted against your overall consumption. So it's a decentralized model. Obviously, centralization of renewables at large scale has its own advantage of once you have that scale, then the tariff substantially comes down. If you are at a smaller scale, obviously the tariff is high because the capital cost then gets distributed better at a centralized scale. But it is not centralized model. It is actually decentralized model, and rooftop installation is the best example of that. Another example is microgrids, and good that question is asked by Arpit. We have installed around 200 microgrids. Those are mainly in UP and Bihar area, where it is in a rural part of the country, and those microgrids are very loosely connected with the system grid, and actually they have solar as one of the input to the microgrid, or biomass, biogas. These are the input to the microgrid, and they have their own distribution network. And these microgrids are successful where the distribution is not very reliable. So that is probably the way forward. If the distribution in those remote areas is not improving, obviously microgrids is the solution. But it is not a centralized model, it is a decentralized model, and we have huge potential, rooftop potential in India. And if all the consumers decide to have their own generation, then probably they can participate in that decentralized mode of generation. Also, the tariff today are very, very competitive, and in many states, it makes economical sense to have a rooftop. The tariff which the distribution companies charge them, solar generation at times is cheaper than the distribution company's tariff, and it makes economic sense to have solar rooftop. I will also add in what Aditya said, the dependency on China is for making solar modules is mainly for the polysilicon part of it. We make polysilicon from silica. From polysilicon, we make ingot. From ingot, we make wafers. From wafers to cells and cells to modules. So India has wafers to cells and cells to module manufacturing capacity. Our dependency on China for polysilicon, and that is due to the scale what they have. Unless we have that scale of operations, the cost will not be competitive, and that is why we have that challenge. But with the PLI schemes and many players coming into the entire value chain, I am sure the things will change in next 3 to 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Paranspe. Yes, we are somewhere dependent on China for solar polysilicons. But as you rightly mentioned, that with the government schemes coming out for Indian manufacturers, we will soon be independent on that. Mr. Paranspe, I have another question for you. That how is India's remarkable achievement in the non-fossil fuel installed capacity setting a precedent for sustainable energy transition at a global level?
If I understood the question correctly, I think the question is how India can contribute
Yes.
in that.
Sustainable energy.
Yeah, India is blessed with good solar radiation. We call it as insolation, and that insolation is good in Rajasthan area. We discussed about it. Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and part of Telangana. So these are the states where we have very good solar insolation. So most of the capacities you will find in those 7 8 states. The capacity is today identified at 714 gigawatts. So that is a huge capacity solar potential we have. Similarly, we have wind potential almost in the same states. It's only a coincidence, but these states also have very good wind potential. We also have offshore wind potential in states like Gujarat and Tamil Nadu. We are obviously in a very early stage. We are still doing the environmental impact study for offshore wind, and probably we are 5 years away from having any large scale offshore wind installed. But we have very good offshore wind potential also. So India, in a way, is blessed with natural resources. And just to add, though we don't call hydro as renewables, actually hydro is renewable, but we started recognizing hydro as renewable just 2 years back. Before that, hydro was hydro, and renewable is all other wind and solar. We have fantastic hydro potential in the north and northeast. Unfortunately, the infrastructure there is not adequate today for anybody to go and tap that potential. So unless there is help from government side to develop that infrastructure, we will not be able to do large scale hydros. But in a short, we are blessed with excellent renewable resources, including hydros, and that is why India can contribute in a major way in renewable portfolio of the world.
Thank you, Mr. Paranspe. Yes, our states with variable climatic conditions and potentials are one of the key contributing factors for our natural energy resources. Mr. Brajesh, how do you look at this development, and which additions, according to you, will be required to maintain an efficient and effective distribution and supply pattern?
Yeah, Mahesh did mention in the previous sections about centralized and decentralized nature. And the good part is that India is lines of falling within the kinds of tropics and all of that. So from that perspective, location make a lot of difference. The solar, I think pretty much you can set up anywhere in the country. There's a resource available across. It's just of course the industry do vary, but then you look at the cost of transmission from one location, Rajasthan, going all the way to northeast states or the eastern states. So if you want that math, then if you add all of those aspects, then possibly generating some of these projects locally, I think makes sense. And I would quote some of these examples where the Karnataka experimented, where they allowed installing some around 20 megawatt projects or 10 megawatt projects. So, you go and really set up smaller scale projects at the distribution level itself. Like embedded generation projects that we have seen quite a few projects doing it. There's a PM Kusum Yojana is in progress. There's a solar pump Yojana in progress. All of it, what is leading to is about just putting the generation and consumption point together wherever it is possible. But then also you have a need where you want economies of scale, where the project has to be installed at a larger level, and that's where you have to look at the locations like Rajasthan or Karnataka or Tamil Nadu. That's where the resource is quite efficient, and that's where you can generate at larger volume and produce at a competitive. I think it's a blend of both. Wherever it is possible, let's utilize the local level generation that pretty much can be done with the solar and the biomass and biogas-based plants. And I think hydro and wind, these are the two resources which is going to be located where the point of generation is. So that's where I think we have to look at putting in the projects over there and using across. So we have to have this hybrid approach. Largely it will be like centralized project and partly by the decentralized. So in terms of the number of projects, the centralized project will be less but contribute to the more quantum, while decentralized projects will be far exceeds in the numbers, but would be slightly less in which into it balanced from efficient on the market.
Mr. Aditya, coming to you, how are the panel manufacturers leveraging this opportunity by increasing the installation capacity of their solar panels for various projects?
Actually, yes, Indian manufacturers are really catching up with their installed capacities, and they're increasing their installed capacity. The challenge we face as Raison, we are also expanding ourselves and will be coming, as I mentioned in my opening talk, we are at 2.5 gigawatt manufacturing facility as we talk, and we'll be installing a 1 gigawatt cell line in Surat that will be commissioning by end of 2024 calendar year. Yes, keeping these things, yes, many people are doing capacity additions, but the policy also is slightly challenging, because until the last financial we had ALMM, but from 1st of April, ALMM is not in place, and now there's tough competition from our Chinese counterparts. So value addition is one thing, but I think some tariff barriers should also kick in to keep Indian module manufacturers healthy.
Thank you, Mr.
Capacity
Aditya.
addition, Indians are doing at a very fast pace, and huge investments are coming in module manufacturing space, cell manufacturing space. As Mr. Mahesh pointed out, yes, the entire value chain from ingot to wafer is being made in this PLI schemes.
Thank you, Mr. Aditya, for
you.
elaborating on the manufacturer's perspective. Mr. Ajay,
Yeah.
You briefly explained about the wind energy's contribution. So, I want to understand is which technology innovations and investment strategies are critical to overcome the technical hurdles when we are integrating the wind energy to the power systems and power grids. How do we achieve it seamlessly?
So think of improvements in technology with relation to wind. Largely, you go higher, you set up bigger machines. That is what is happening. We started off with, say, 250 kilowatt machines. Today, we are talking about this. Last year we talked about 3.5. Now someone is talking about 5.1. So the thing is that size thing is going on. Now, where we actually fall short is in terms of the evacuation infrastructure. And some states, I would say, have done better than others when it comes to setting that thing up. Some states, especially those where the discoms itself are in deep financial trouble, they have a problem setting anything up. Like you still have the old 11 kVA lines in place of 33 kVA, etc. Still, I mean, those things are still there. Now, Tamil Nadu is one of the early adopters of wind and probably also solar. But then if you look at the substations, you don't have dedicated substations for wind. I mean, at least not in sufficient quantity. They are there, but not in sufficient quantity. most of them are what are called mixed substations. So when it is mixed, the thing is that, okay, what does a guy take? What does he stop? All those decisions come into play. And many times over there, what happens is that wind turns out to be a loser because it is the easiest to stop wind. I mean, in the sense that don't take wind, like let the wind go waste, right? So the thing of thermal, it takes longer to ramp up and ramp down. Okay? So therefore, that gets precedent. So these kind of things have been going on. Like they are getting addressed. It's not as if nothing is happening. Like the thing is that this one nation, one grid thing has definitely helped. Like you're finding that earlier, everything was intrastate network connected thing. Now, largely it is all getting into the interstate transmission system. The other thing is that the way like POSOCO or the earlier POSOCO has emerged, Grid India thing, then you have a CTUIL, etc. coming up. Very clear that the focus is on the thing of transmission. If you look at what the CEA itself has done in terms of its planning exercise, they have planned for the thing of larger this thing for transmission. So I think that transmission problem is getting addressed. Probably not at the speed that we are like as generators we want, but then it's definitely happened. Yeah.
Probably I can add in what Mr. Ajay said. One more concern area is good wind sites are today used for lower hub height turbines. When the wind industry started, the good sites were taken by players quickly, and lower hub height turbines were put there. So repowering policy, there is some repowering policy, but probably we'll have to revisit that repowering policy. And as the hub height increases, the wind velocity increases, and the power output is proportional to the square of the wind velocity. So we have a huge advantage. So if that policy can be revisited by government and can be improved upon, then probably we can have more repowering possibilities at the wind sites, and the existing wind sites will produce more wind energy. I think just to add in what Mr. Ajay said.
Very right.
Yes, Mr. Paranspe. Following that, Mr. Paranspe, there is one more question. You, in your submission, you spoke about recycling the used solar panels and old solar panels. So, Mr. Kundan Singh has a question that are we really going rapidly through solar power generation? So, do you think that the big players should also have a roadmap in the recycling and waste management of solar modules, as we have a huge responsibility needs to look into it? Is India doing enough to tackle it on time?
Good question. Our first major utility scale installation happened in 2011. Any solar module has a life of 25 years, and that's why I mentioned the first major disposal of modules is going to happen in 2036. We are still 13 years away from that point. And there are good business models available in Europe where agencies come and collect the old modules from you at free of cost, and then they recycle and earn money. So recycling in a responsible way is definitely feasible. 80% can be recycled, and the business, there are good companies who are doing business that is in Europe today. I'm sure India will also have that opportunity, and players will take that opportunity. We also have moral responsibility of disposing of modules. So obviously, good players will come forward and have uh, uh, business around it. So what is there in the module? It is glass which can be recycled, aluminum which can be recycled, copper, silver which obviously can be recycled. There are other items which we may have to, like backsheet, we may have to burn it, but otherwise almost everything can be recycled. So another thing which is associated with this question is how much energy is put in the module to produce that module, and that module in its lifetime, how much energy it gives out. So the ratio is 1:to almost 750 today. So another perception that we put a lot of energy in making that module, and the module generates lesser energy, that is not true. it is totally energy positive, much positive than what we consume in making the module. So obviously we'll have opportunities around it, safer disposal of modules, but probably we are still away from that major disposal which will happen in 2036.
Thank you, Mr. Baransky, for addressing that. I'm sure Mr. Kundan is satisfied with your response. Mr. Aditya, coming to you, are one of the module manufacturers. So, how do you look at the need for having a recycling or waste management facility for solar modules?
Actually, I think the MNRE is also coming up out with a for recycling policy. And there are also a few companies, as Mr. Mahesh has pointed out, there are a few companies which are also venturing in India for buying out these used solar modules and recycling it. I don't have a clear clarity on that. Maybe in our next meetings, maybe I'll try to give you a feedback on that.
Definitely so.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Mr. Kumar, what is your perspective on this about having a waste management and module and recycling facility for solar modules and solar cells?
I think that's quite important and need of the hour. Given that the modules are, I think there is like a smaller size if you look at 1 meter by 2 meter size, and the number of modules that get installed in any solar project of 200 megawatts, in 100,000. So, and the scale at which we are building the capacities very soon, as Mahesh has pointed out, like 10 years down the line, we will start seeing the large scale project. But at the same time, there are disposals because of the breakdowns at various levels in the solar project. Because the damage, if there are some other issues, the projects have to be placed, and there are some cases where hailstorm has happened. There are other damages. Like the replacement of the modules are a sort of ongoing phenomenon. And in that context, we need to have some sort of arrangement. And what we already doing, we ourselves are owning and operating several solar projects in the country and elsewhere in the Asia Pacific. That's where we work with the waste, in terms of people who do these responsible waste management. So they are certified players, and that's what we work with. And wherever there's OEMs going to take back the modules, like the First Solar has got a program where they will, at end of the life, they will take back the modules for the recycling purposes. And I think, as Aditya was saying, that the policy is in progress. Possibly, the best would be, OEMs do come up with certain policies where if there's a program where the end of use life, you can go back and submit those modules, and then something could be done. So it's going to be sort of win-win for all of us. But at the same time, this reiterating the point, the larger scale, and these things will materialize more once the large scale recycling start happening, which is I think 10 to 20 years down the line.
Thank you, Mr. Brajesh, for addressing that. Mr. Ajay Devraj, coming to you. With the surgence of alternative fuels like biofuels, green hydrogen, and other renewable energy resources, how do you look at the need for energy storage and the need to have efficient distribution systems in India?
See, the thing is that energy storage, yes, it's definitely required, but the energy storage requirements are different in different states. Like some states will require more by way of storage or alternatives to storage. Some will require slightly less. That's one. Second thing is that when it comes to the thing of storage, as I mentioned earlier, like the way forward to bring down the costs of storage would be to promote the thing of, say, wind solar hybrids, for example, where the size of the storage thing that is required, that thing comes down. Plus, it is being utilized by both solar as well as wind. So what happens is that the cost is spread between both. So overall, one, the size comes down. Two, the thing of the per unit thing also is probably to a great extent reduced. Now, you talked about green hydrogen and things like that. Yes, those things are there, but then the thing is that, like I find, at least amongst the people that I interact with in the industry, that there are very few actually who have an idea as to how to go about this thing of say, forward integration into green hydrogen or things like that. So, like for example, like Coimbatore happens to be one of the places where there's a lot of wind energy, Coimbatore, Tirupur, those areas. Now, are there industries that use hydrogen in those particular locations? The answer is no. Of course, largely textile. Okay? So the thing is that possibly it makes sense where, let me give an example, say fertilizer industry or steel industry. Like if you have something that can be transported to those particular places, or you set it up over there, it's probably powered by the thing of renewable energy, then you probably have a business case going. But I don't think, or at least I have not come across any report or any study that has looked at it from that angle. I think it's a work in progress, plenty that needs to get done over there.
Thank you, Mr. Ajay, for addressing that. Mr. Paranspe, so when we talk about surgence of these alternative fuels, so even the discoms and gencos also needs to be aligned with them. So what measures are the distribution companies and generation companies taking to explore this untapped potential of alternative energy sources, especially when we are talking about the government initiatives like Power for All, One Nation, One Grid, and rural electrification?
Yeah, here I'll take example of Germany, where they said producing your own electricity or generating your own electricity is your right. Whereas we still are struggling when we go to distribution companies. They find it difficult to take the renewable power if you are generating more. Also, once we start taking renewable power, their supplies are reduced, and the money they have put in developing that infrastructure, that also goes waste. So there are challenges on the distribution side, obviously, to allow many players or rooftop players to go for renewables. But as we saw in Germany, probably days are not far when even we will adopt that you have right to generate your own electricity. And that point of time, the distribution companies will have to support us. Today also they are supporting. There are good. There is good push from the government side. We have renewable power obligation for the distribution companies. They have to buy renewable energy as part of the energy mix. So there is definitely support from government side. Distribution companies are also trying to find out ways to absorb that. Probably storage is another solution. And again, I'll go to countries like Germany, where uh, smaller distribution circles, they try to become independent. They have solar and wind integrated at their distribution level, and then it is loosely connected with the main grid. They try to manage the network in smaller distribution circles where they have their own generation, they have their own storage. Probably these are the ways even we have to adopt going forward. Also, in rural India, there are opportunities like biomass, biogas. We made some attempts earlier also, but those were not successful. We'll have to again look at it in terms of policy support, how we can give policy support. For example, agriculture waste. Can we use that agriculture waste and generate electricity and then support rural distribution? Probably we'll have to look at policies and learn from the past failures. I think again on that front, we can do much better.
So also you spoke about the challenge about ensuring round the clock reliable power. So what do you think that how do we create a long-term strategy to address the challenges to ensure the round the clock power availability, especially in the carbon intensive areas?
So Ajay sir talked about wind solar hybrid. I think that is one solution which will improve the overall contribution of renewable energy to any customer. Today, if we take only solar, then probably the customer can get say 40-50% of his energy through renewable. If we add wind solar, probably he can go up to 60-70%. If we add battery to it, then he can go up to 85-90%. So that is a very good percentage of total energy he is taking from renewables. So I think storage is one solution. And when I say storage, it need not be limited to only electrochemical storage, that is battery storage, but it is also hydro pump storage. And there are many companies now, including Tata Power, we are looking at hydro pump storage opportunities. And once we integrate that with renewables, I think round the clock renewable is not difficult. There are business models available on the Excel sheet where we can make it round the clock. The costs are probably prohibitive today if we add too much of battery to it. But as we increase number of battery installations, sheer scale will bring down the cost, and probably round the clock renewable energy is possible.
Yes, and like you also mentioned earlier, that the soon the consumers will also become prosumers if we adopt this strategy.
Correct. Everybody should have right to generate his own electricity. I think that we should drive in the country.
Yes, sir. Yes, absolutely. Mr. Kumar, how do you look at this need to, and what strategies do you believe or would you like to suggest to ensure the round the clock availability of power?
There are two perspectives. Of course, the renewables are going to get increased in terms of overall share, and they will bring their own intermittency, own challenges. And what we need to look at from both the sides, of course, there's one side of generation side, and other side is the consumption. So if we want the power, both the things has to meet. There's one way of like we have to look at from the storage, and we talked about there are natural strategies in terms of if we do the demand shift, like when we shift our demand from the time blocks when like morning and evening peak hours, the solar is available pretty much in the afternoon hours. Then the shifting of demand itself happens during the daytime wherever it is possible. Wherever there's a flexible load available. Of course, some part of the load can go very well in that segment. The agricultural load, which is again a flexible load, which is normally served during the night time, possibly as the things are evolving, which can also shift during the daytime during the sun hours. I think that's sort of a natural shift will allow us with less requirement of energy storage, first of all, and that's a pretty much easily a low-hanging fruit which utilities can tap in. And that will not add to any cost at all. In fact, it is going to be a cheaper solution where you don't have to invest into any of the storage or grid infrastructure. So this is like low-hanging fruit, must be tapped on priority, which I think some discounts have already taken some initiative. Telangana has started some initiatives around it, started some initiatives. So I think it has to become a part of overall planning perspective. Second thing is the generation planning. The wind, solar, also these resources are sort of a complementary. Like the wind is peak during the monsoon time when solar goes down because of cloud cover. And wind also comes up quite significantly pick up in the mid morning and evening hours while the solar is not available. So there's again natural hedge available. So a mix of these two resources on overall basis, and then coupled with storage, which are like natural storage such as hydro, pumped hydro. I think these are again low hanging fruits. I think if these can be combined, this is one. And fourth one again, which is a very low hanging one, is about the flexible generation. Thermal at this point of time is considered as a like inflexible load. But if we just go back to the Nordic countries where renewables are considered as like must have dispatched one, but thermal load is considered as a flexible load because you can control the fuel. And of course, the ramp up and ramp down is a bit challenging, but you can plan from a planning perspective. We can plan our generation curve and load curve such that the ramp up and ramp down do happen quite quickly. I think that is quite possible with some experience. I think the grid operators NLDC, RLDC, and CPU, they are working quite hard to make that happen. It will happen. And finally, it will get also which type of energy storage that we are putting up. There are like long storage durations where hydro will come quite handy, but there will be a small duration, few milliseconds or seconds. That's where you need a fast ramp up, like then for that you need a lithium ion storage things like that. So you will have to have the mix of approach to work at how holistically you want to manage your demand supply without disturbing the grid. That's my take on the storage.
Thank you, Mr. Rajesh. Mr. Ajay?
Okay. See, one thing is that recently I met the CMD of a particular discom. He was stating, like we're taking more of wind energy and all that. This is very good. But then I think it was largely because the coal prices went up through the roof. And the other thing was your transportation, this thing, shipment cost also had gone up. So that's the reason why you guys actually used wind. But having used wind, I hope you like wind. So, I mean, he started laughing. But then, so I think in a large way, we must thank Putin and the Ukraine war for a greater appreciation of what renewable energy can do. So that is one part of this entire thing. Now, sometime in 2019, if I recall right, there was this thing of reverse bundling. That is a combination of the thing of renewable energy with thermal. Now, as a further thing to that, what is now happening is that I recall a few months back seeing one more policy initiative that had come out, wherein for thermal stations, they're looking at reducing the technical minimum from even that 55%, trying to take it maybe to about 45%. And they had identified something like about 27 or 30 thermal stations as experiments, like over I think about 3 or 4 year period. So I think there is something definitely happening over there. So this thing of round the clock power through reverse bundling is something I think that the government seems to be trying to push. And then, yes, as the other panelists have mentioned, like you can have this thing with pumped hydro storage and a host of other things that are available. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ajay. We have a lot of questions still, but since we are running short of time, Mr. Mahesh Piranspe, may I please request you to make a closing statement for our today's discussion?
Yeah, thanks for this session, Megha and Sachi. What is more important for all of us is not connecting renewables to only the green push. But as Mr. Ajay said, if somebody is ready to buy because fossil fuel energy prices are going up, that necessarily means we are becoming more and more competitive. And if that becomes our USP, that we are the cheapest, then probably we don't have to use even that language that they are buying because coal is going high. That is one. Second is all the panelists also mentioned about different policies which the government has to bring or they have to relook. I think some of the points on, especially on manufacturing and transmission network, I think that probably we'll have to address quickly. Thanks for this session, and I look forward to have more sessions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Piranspe. And yes, we need to find alternative and affordable prices for adopting renewable energy resources. It's now time to close our session, and I request Sachi to do the closing of today's power.
Thank you, panelists, for exchanging your valuable thoughts on today's topic, exploring the future of alternative energy. We hope you have enjoyed it. Before wrapping up today's session, we would like to thank our distinguished panelists, Mr. Mahesh Piranspe, Mr. Aditya Chalasani, Mr. Ajay Devraj, and Mr. Brijesh Kumar. For viewers who have joined us today, we would like to have your feedback and encourage you to stay connected with us via our social media handles. EPR Magazine is available on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also download our app from Google Play and App Store. We would also request our viewers to stay tuned and for future interactions. With that, today's interaction has now come to a close. Thank you and goodbye.